The waiter's question cut through the noise like a pin in a balloon. "Still a table for 5, ma'am?" I smiled too quickly, too brightly, and said, "Yes." Even though I knew the answer was already no. The name's Clara Wynne, 36 years old, senior project director at a mid-sized architecture firm downtown. I'd spent the last 8 years clawing my way through meetings where no one looked me in the eye until they needed something done. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, I was finally the one being celebrated. I'd booked the restaurant myself, a coastal place my mom loved, all glass and candlelight. I'd invited Margaret Wynne, my mother, my younger brother Ethan, our family's golden child, Sophie Lane, my cousin who never missed a free meal, and Uncle Tommy Hale, the only person in that family who ever remembered my birthday. But as I sat in that corner booth, fiddling with the napkin and checking my phone every 10 seconds, it felt less like a celebration and more like a test I was already failing. "They're just running late," I murmured, ordering a glass of red wine I didn't even want. The waiter nodded kindly. Pity in his eyes. Late turned into an hour turned into 2. My phone stayed dark except for work notifications and a text from my boss. "So proud of you, Clara. You earned it." The irony made me laugh under my breath. I told the waiter to bring the appetizer anyway, too embarrassed to leave, too stubborn to admit I'd been stood up. Every tick of the clock felt like another reminder that I was always the dependable one, the one who showed up, who paid, who fixed everything. When the main course arrived, I took a single bite before my phone finally buzzed. Relief rushed in, and then stopped cold. It wasn't a message, it was a photo. My family. All of them. At a beachside grill 10 miles away, wine glasses raised, smiles wide, the ocean glowing behind them, and front and center Ethan holding up the keys to a brand new speedboat. The caption read, "He earned this. So proud of you. Ethan." My heart didn't drop. It froze. Above that post, a text from Mom, sent an hour earlier. "Sweetheart, don't wait up. We'll catch up soon. You're not the priority right now." The words burned through the screen, not angry, just casual. Practiced. I stared at the picture again. Margaret laughing. Sophie with her perfect hair. Uncle Tommy half smiling like he'd been dragged there. And Ethan soaking in the spotlight that used to blind me. I'd spent my entire adult life keeping them afloat, paying the mortgage after Dad died, fixing Ethan's debt, buying Mom a new car when hers gave out. I told myself that's what love looked like. Responsibility, loyalty, family. But sitting there in the half-empty restaurant, surrounded by plates, meant for people who never showed, I finally wondered if maybe I'd just been feeding ghosts. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not sadness, not anger, just the beginning of distance. The drive home was silent except for the sound of my own pulse. The city lights blurred past like streaks of apology I'd never receive. I parked outside my apartment, turned off the engine, and just sat there staring at my reflection in the dark windshield. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in years past. This felt different, colder, clearer. Inside, the apartment looked too neat, too quiet, the kind of space you keep tidy when no one else ever visits. My promotion certificate still sat unopened on the counter beside a half-eaten muffin. I poured myself a glass of water and scrolled through my banking app out of habit. The numbers were neat, too. Clean columns of transactions that told a very messy story. The shared mortgage, the utilities for the family house, the temporary transfers to Ethan. Every month like clockwork. I scrolled back through 3 years of payments until my eyes blurred. $84,000. Quietly handed over. Never asked back. My thumb hovered over the next payment due in 2 days. I thought about Mom's text. "You're not the priority right now." Maybe she was right. Maybe, for once, I shouldn't be. I opened my laptop. The blue glow filled the room like stage light before the curtain drops. The cursor blinked in the password box of the bank's portal. One line, one decision. I selected cancel automatic payment. The page asked for confirmation. Are you sure you want to stop this transaction? I clicked yes. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like air. Like finally exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. On my desk sat a small notepad, the kind I used for to-do lists and grocery runs. I tore off a page and wrote 5 words in all caps. Let him handle it now. Folding the note felt ceremonial, final in its simplicity. I grabbed my keys again. The road to the old house was empty at that hour, just the hum of streetlights and the occasional flicker of memory. I'd paid for those windows to be replaced last winter. I'd funded the paint job after the storm damage. Every corner of that home had my fingerprints on it, though you'd never know. When I reached the porch, I taped the note to the front door and stood there for a full minute. The night was cold, the ocean air sharp against my skin. Behind that door was the family I'd spent my life rescuing, and for the first time, I turned away without knocking. The next morning began with noise, not the peaceful kind that fills a home, the kind that feels like invasion. My phone buzzed before sunrise. First one vibration, then another, until the entire nightstand hummed like a trapped bee. At first, I ignored it. But curiosity has a cruel way of winning. 83 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 27 unread messages. The first name on the list, Mom, then Ethan, then Sophie. Over and over again, like a carousel of guilt. For a moment, I just stared. There it was, the confirmation that the quiet rebellion had worked. Not a single one of them noticed me last night, but cancel one payment. And suddenly, I was the center of their universe. I brewed coffee before pressing play on the first voicemail. Mom's voice filled the kitchen, sharp and frantic. Clara, what did you do? The bank called. The payment didn't go through. You knew we were counting on you. Ethan's been doing so well, why would you sabotage that? Then, softer, like a dagger wrapped in velvet. This isn't how family behaves. I hit replay, just to hear it again. This isn't how family behaves. The irony settled bitter on my tongue. The second voicemail came from Ethan, his tone uneven, swinging between panic and anger. Seriously? Clara, you couldn't have given us a heads up. You're making Mom lose it. We were going to handle it. We just needed more time. Why do you always have to make everything about you? More time. They'd had 3 years of my time. 3 years of my paycheck. The third message was from Sophie, always the diplomat until she didn't get her way. Okay, wow. So, you're punishing the whole family now. Over what? A dinner? Grow up. Clara, you always act like you're the only one who sacrifices. Ethan's been hustling too. By the way, he deserved that boat. Not everything has to revolve around you. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that bounced off the kitchen tiles. My little job promotion had been overshadowed by a grown man buying a toy with credit. I poured coffee and sat by the window, watching sunlight crawl across the countertop. Somewhere out there, they were probably gathered in a panic, rewriting the story to make me the villain. I could almost hear them now. Mom insisting I was unstable, Sophie nodding along, Ethan sulking like the wounded hero. But in that quiet kitchen, something inside me clicked into place. I'd spent my entire life being the fixer, the rescuer, the glue. They called me the strong one when they needed something, and selfish when I asked for anything back. Every time I tried to step away, they dangled love like a leash. Now the leash was gone. Still, guilt is a persistent echo. I opened the last message, one from Mom, sent hours after midnight. We just don't understand you anymore. You've changed. This isn't who you are. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had changed. Or maybe, for the first time, I was just becoming who I was always supposed to be. I scrolled through the messages again, noticing the pattern. None of them asked why. Not one person wondered if I was okay, or if something had happened to me. Every message was about them, their fear, their inconvenience, their loss of control. And suddenly, I realized something simple but devastating. I'd taught them to treat me this way. Every time I fixed their mess, I told them it was okay to make another one. Every time I covered a bill or swallowed a slight, I trained them to believe I'd never stop. But I had stopped. By noon, my phone had quieted again, as if the storm had burned itself out. I set it face down on the counter, poured another cup of coffee, and opened my laptop. The email icon blinked with work notifications, proof that somewhere beyond my family's orbit, the world still functioned. For the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in their noise. The silence that once felt lonely now felt like oxygen. Outside, the day was bright and cold. I cracked the window, letting in the breeze, and whispered to no one. This is exactly how family behaves when it's finally just you. That night, the silence grew heavier, not hostile, just honest. It filled the corners of my apartment where old memories used to hide. I sat at the edge of my bed, the phone dark beside me, and thought about how long I'd been living for other people's comfort. The truth was, I hadn't started being generous out of guilt. It began with a promise. I could still see the hospital room, the faint smell of antiseptic, the tired beeping of the monitors. My father lay pale against the sheets, his hand trembling as it closed around mine. "Take care of them, Clara," he whispered. "Your mother's heart is soft. Your brother still needs time. You're the strong one. I was 22, barely old enough to pay my own bills." But I nodded. It felt like the right thing to do, like love and duty were the same. After he passed, I followed that promise like scripture. I worked double shifts, sent money home, fixed leaks, signed checks. Every good deed was another brick in the wall between me and my own life. I told myself I was honoring him, but maybe I was just afraid to stop. Even after I moved out, the calls kept coming. "Mom's just this one time. Ethan's, you're the only one who understands." And I believed it because being needed felt like belonging. Now, years later, I could finally see it for what it was, a chain made of good intentions. My father hadn't meant to trap me, but love, when mixed with guilt, becomes a kind of cage. I walked to the window and looked out over the quiet street. Somewhere, families were sitting down to dinner, arguing, laughing, living messy but honest lives. Mine was built on debts disguised as devotion. I touched the glass and whispered to my reflection. I kept my promise. Dad, maybe too well. Then I turned away from the window, ready to start breaking it. By the third day, the calls had slowed from frantic to strategic. Messages turned from panic into persuasion, each one worded like a plea disguised as reason. But I didn't answer any of them until the screen flashed, "Uncle Tommy Hale." Tommy wasn't the type to meddle. He'd been my father's closest friend, the quiet anchor in every family storm. When I picked up, his voice was low and careful, like he was approaching a wounded animal. "Your mom's a wreck, Clara," he said. "She says she didn't realize how left out you felt." I stared at the floor, at the old coffee stain I'd never bothered to clean. "She didn't realize," I said softly. "She texted me I wasn't a priority. That's not ignorance. Tommy, that's intent." He sighed on the other end, a sound that carried more truth than apology. "They're scared. They don't know how to function without you holding everything together." "I know," I said. "That's the problem." There was a long silence, no lecture, no defense, just air between two people who understood the cost of family too well. Finally, I spoke. "They've got 30 days. That's how long until the bank posts the final notice. If they want to fix it, they can." Tommy hesitated. "You're serious." "I'm tired," I corrected. "There's a difference." A faint chuckle escaped him, half sorrow, half respect. "You sound more like your father than you think." When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant, just settled, like a storm had passed without thunder. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy with rain. I stood by the window, watching droplets hit the glass, each one a quiet countdown toward a truth I could finally live with. The next morning, I woke to a flood of messages that read more like scripts than apologies. Mom had switched tones again, less frantic, more polished. Sweetheart. Her message began. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Families fight. It was one misunderstanding. Don't let one mistake ruin everything we've built. One mistake? That phrase stuck like a splinter. I opened the family group chat, now renamed Emergency. Then changed again to Mortgage Crisis. And finally, Family Unity Chat. Each new title felt like a desperate rebranding of a problem they refused to face. Sophie was the loudest voice there, typing long paragraphs about keeping perspective and remembering who you are. Ethan sent one message, "We'll figure it out. Just turn the payment back on." It was like watching a play I'd already seen, only this time, I wasn't the lead. I was the audience, quiet, observant, detached, scrolling through the chat. I realized they weren't talking to me. They were talking around me, like I was a malfunction to be managed. Each sentence was an attempt to rewrite the story so they could stay blameless. Mom, the wounded matriarch. Ethan, the misunderstood dreamer. Sophie, the voice of reason. And me, I was the cold one, the career girl who forgot her roots. But as I read, something inside me solidified. They could rename the chat 100 times. The plot would stay the same. I was no longer the provider, no longer the lifeline. The family they wanted me to believe in wasn't real. It was a business model with my name on the check. I typed a single message and sent it. Don't worry, you'll figure it out. Then I muted the conversation and placed my phone face down on the table. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was relief. For once, I wasn't part of their rewrite. I was writing my own. The knock came on a Sunday afternoon, sharp and impatient. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Only one person in my family knocked like she owned the place Sophie Lane. When I opened the door, she pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. She was dressed like she'd come straight from brunch, lipstick flawless, perfume too strong, righteousness radiating off her like static. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. "About what I asked, though I already knew. About this little tantrum you're throwing. You're hurting Mom." I leaned against the doorway, calm in a way that seemed to annoy her even more. Hurting her. She texted me the night of my promotion to say I wasn't a priority. Sophie rolled her eyes. You know she didn't mean it like that. She's just overwhelmed. And Ethan, he's finally doing something for himself. Buying that boat was good for him. Good for him, I said quietly. He hasn't paid for a meal in years, and I'm the one who funded half his self-improvement projects. She scoffed, tossing her hair. You always make yourself the victim. You think you're the only one who works hard. You think you're the only one who's ever sacrificed for family? I looked at her for a long moment before replying. No, Sophie. I think I'm the only one who stopped pretending it was love. The words landed like a slap. For a second, her face softened, then hardened again. They're your family, she said, voice trembling with something that almost sounded like fear. They were, I said. Now they're just people I used to pay for. Sophie stared at me, searching for the old version of me, the one who'd cave, apologize, fix it all again. But I stayed silent. When she finally left, she didn't slam the door. She just walked out slowly, like someone realizing the house she'd lived in wasn't built on love, but on debt. That evening, my phone lit up again. Mom's name glowing across the screen like a warning flare. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won, as it always did. The message began tender, rehearsed in that soft tone she used when she wanted something. Sweetheart, please don't let this spiral. I'll make your favorite lasagna. We'll sit down and talk. You know how proud I am of you. Then, the switch. It always came. But canceling the mortgage was reckless. You had no right to make that decision. You've been paying voluntarily. That was your choice. Voluntarily. The word hung in the air like smoke. I stared at it until the meaning shifted, until voluntary stopped sounding like freedom and started feeling like mockery. It was never voluntary. It was expected, assumed, demanded. I sat down at my desk, and the memory surfaced Christmas last year. Ethan giving Mom a designer bag, still tagged, everyone clapping as she hugged him. Tears in her eyes. I'd recognized the receipt. My credit card. When I confronted him later, he laughed. "You'll get the points back," he'd said. "Relax." Mom had sided with him, whispering, "You always help, it's who you are." Maybe it was. Until now. The phone buzzed again, a new text. Same rhythm. She alternated guilt and gratitude like it was choreography. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my bank app again, scrolling through years of voluntary deductions, mortgages, repairs, bailouts, a quiet lifetime of saying yes. The room felt heavier, like all those transactions were stacked on my chest. I grabbed my notebook and wrote a single line across the page. No more voluntary love. It looked small, but it was everything. The end of a contract I never signed, and the beginning of something I couldn't yet name my own permission to stop. It was close to midnight when I finally opened my laptop again. The screen glowed against the dark, that sterile blue light that made everything look a little too honest. I found the old spreadsheet, years of payments, transfers, and IOUs no one remembered but me. $84,000, 5 years of helping. Every cell a story: Ethan's rent, Mom's car insurance, Sophie's short-term loan, each one a quiet apology for wanting peace. I scrolled until my eyes blurred, then opened a new document. Title, What I Owe Myself. Line by line. I began to write not in numbers, but in truths. 1 birthday spent alone. 2 promotions ignored. 3 years of paying for a house I didn't live in. Then the harder lines: the right to rest, the right to say no, the right to stop buying love that never came. It wasn't a financial ledger anymore. It was a confession, a reckoning. By the time I finished, my shoulders ached, but the weight in my chest had shifted. The document glowed on the screen, my first piece of evidence that I existed outside of their needs. I didn't print it. I didn't save it to the cloud. I just stared at it until I could breathe again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel indebted. I felt even. A week later, the sound of tires crunching gravel pulled me to the window. Headlights flared across my driveway, slicing through the dusk. Then I saw it, the shimmering blue speedboat perched on a trailer, like a monument to everything wrong with my family. Mom stood beside it, arms folded tight, while Ethan paced with his phone pressed to his ear. They looked like a scene rehearsed a dozen times, her pleading, him pretending to fix it. Then her voice carried through the door. "Clara, sweetheart, please just open up. You're proving your point. We get it. I didn't move." From the peephole, I watched Ethan gesture toward the boat, shouting something I couldn't hear. Mom nodded, probably convincing herself that showing up jet ski in tow counted as an apology. But I knew why they were really there. Not for me, for the mortgage. The sight was absurdly poetic, the symbol of Ethan's success parked in front of my apartment, a glittering plea for help. I backed away from the door, heart steady. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. Outside, their voices faded into frustration, the engine revving before it all dissolved into silence. When I finally looked again, the driveway was empty. Only the tire tracks remained, curving like a signature across the gravel, proof they'd been here, and that I hadn't answered. For the first time, I realized silence wasn't punishment, it was freedom. 3 days after the boat incident, the knock came again, softer this time. Not the desperate pounding of guilt, but something slower, heavier. I opened the door halfway and saw Margaret Wynne, my mother, standing alone. No Ethan, no Sophie, no noise, just her, holding a tote bag like she was visiting a stranger. "Clara," she said quietly, her voice cracking on my name. "Please, we need to talk." I stepped aside without a word. She walked in slowly, her eyes sweeping the apartment like she was cataloging all the things that didn't belong to her: the framed diploma, the clean counters, the fern by the window. She used to call it my temporary phase. Now she looked at it like it was evidence. "We're going to lose the house," she said. "I know," I replied. "You can stop this," she continued. "Just call the bank. Tell them there was a mistake. They said you always handle it." I folded my arms. "That's exactly the problem. Mom, I always handle it." She blinked fast, like the words stung. "This isn't just about money, Clara. It's about family." I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. "You told me I wasn't a priority. The night I got promoted, you celebrated Ethan for buying a boat he couldn't afford. That's not family. Mom, that's performance." Her composure cracked. The tears came quickly. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying," she whispered. "That's the thing," I said softly. "You didn't want to realize it." She looked up at me then, eyes glassy, voice small. "Ethan's not like you. He needs more help." "No," I said, stepping closer. "He needs consequences." For a moment, the air between us felt like a mirror, two women staring at the reflection of everything they'd pretended wasn't there. She took a shaky breath. "I didn't want to believe you'd just leave us like this." "I didn't leave," I said. I stopped being used. The words hung in the air, final and calm. She sank into the nearest chair, shoulders sagging as if the truth itself had weight. For once, she didn't argue. "What are we supposed to do now?" she asked, voice trembling. "Figure it out," I said. "The way I had to. The way adults do." Her gaze drifted toward the window. Outside, the sun was setting orange light, filling the room between us, bright but distant. She stood slowly, clutching her bag. "Is this really the end?" she asked. I thought about the years of silence swallowed by obligation, the birthdays alone, the way love in our family always came with a bill attached. "It's the end of pretending this was love," I said quietly. She nodded once. No drama, no speech, just a small, tired nod. Then she turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. The click of the latch echoed through the apartment, softer than thunder, louder than forgiveness. 10 days passed before I saw Ethan win again. He didn't come to the house this time. He showed up at my office. My receptionist messaged me. "There's a man here asking for you. Says it's urgent." When I walked into the lobby, he was slouched in a chair, sunglasses on indoors, tapping his foot like the world owed him patience. "We need to talk," he said, voice tight. "About the house?" I asked. His jaw flexed. "We lost it. 30 days came and went. Mom's staying with Sophie now." I waited. Silence did more damage than shouting. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting. "Why'd you do it, Clara? You were fine. You've got the stable job, the money. You didn't have to make a point." I stared at him, at the grown man still using the same excuses he'd clung to since high school. "I didn't make a point. Ethan. I made a choice." He frowned. "You think you're better than us?" "No," I said softly. "Just better without you." He looked like he wanted to argue, but no words came. When he finally turned to leave, he didn't slam the door, he just walked out. Shoulders heavy, ego deflated. That evening, I packed what little I owned and moved to a new apartment downtown. The space was smaller, quieter, mine. I deleted the family group chat. I closed the last unpaid tab in my mind, and when the first paycheck arrived with no deductions, I smiled not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped losing. For the first time, peace didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like ownership.